Welcome to Ask the Property Experts. I'm Kura Chiota. Today, it's all about leisure property. We're taking a look at the hottest places to buy, live, and invest in South Africa. Joining me in studio are John Loos from FNB Home Loans and Herschel Jawitz from Jawitz Properties. Welcome to you both.
Thank you, Kura.
Now, there was a period when the stock market was boiling hot, when I remember two barometers. You had investment cars and you had the house of cars. There was even fractional ownership on sports cars. There's just so much cash. Bonuses were booming, and you were nobody if you weren't investing in a golf estate on the coast. You were nothing if you didn't have a pad out at Pekinwood for the weekend. You were missing out if you weren't investing in the ever-expanding Belito. Burst my bubble for me, John. Why is the world so different now that leisure property is back there, that the trophy assets are back there? Is that a correct perception?
Well, I think we thought there was so much cash out there, more so than what there actually was. It was a country where a lot of people were living beyond their means, and yes, there were big bonuses at the time. The economy was pumping, but unfortunately that 5% plus economic growth wasn't sustained, and doesn't look as though it's coming back in a hurry at the moment, given the structural issues we have with our economy. So we're back to slow disposable income growth and modest discretionary reward and all those nice things. So what do you do when you're back to, I guess you could call it more normal or mediocre economic times at any rate, is you cut your coat according to your cloth, and one of the things that gets put on the back burner for a lot is that's non-essential property buying. So not only is buy-to-let buying still relatively low compared to those massive boom years, but holiday property buying is low as well. And the holiday towns, the ones driven by strong holiday demand, have underperformed the major metros where primary residential demand is the main driver of property markets. That's a reflection of the times.
Herschel, talk to me about some of those buying trends. Leisure, we can break it down to perhaps like a weekend pad, like people bought in Pekinwood or would drive out to a estate in Dalstrom or something like that, versus the longer distance, the St. Francis Bay or something like that. Speak to me about what you are seeing in those particular spaces, the weekend pad versus the long-term, far-away sort of half-term holiday, school-term holiday sort of adventure.
So it's interesting, in that sort of half an hour away from your major metros, we still are seeing a relatively active market. People who wanting a leisure home, a weekend getaway, and in fact, for some time there was a trend where, for example, people anticipated living at Pekinwood and being able to commute into Sandton to do some work. Obviously, there's some challenges about road infrastructure and traffic and all of those sorts of things, but we have seen a return in that market, and certainly, for example, that Hartbeespoort node in just outside of Johannesburg is more active than it's been over the last couple of years. I think that, as John said, that longer distance leisure market has really become a nice to have, and I think that people are much more focused on the necessities of buying property as opposed to the luxury of buying property, and so we're still seeing in those markets a really massive oversupply and relatively soft demand. It's better than it was, but it still has a long way to go before that starts to balance out in a meaningful way.
Now, John, at the bank, when applications are coming through, an application is an application. You don't judge as a primary residence, as a secondary residence. You wouldn't be able to, on a granular basis, separate out the performance of owner-occupied versus, call it, leisure property, would you?
No, that's a tough one to do, but what we have done is we've analysed deeds data and just taken certain towns which we believe to be strongly holiday demand driven. So the likes of down on the southern Cape Coast, there would be quite a number of them, like Plettenberg Bay, for instance, or Hermanus would be one as well. Up north coast, Belito has been. It's getting more primary residents over time, but we've selected those, and inland ones such as Clarence, and generally since the end of the property boom. Now, at the height of the property boom, those were outperforming the major metros in terms of price growth. There was massive price growth, so they are more cyclical, and then the slump was just that much greater, and for over the past 4 or 5 years or so, net price deflation overall, just coming back in recent times into very slightly positive nominal price growth, but certainly still well behind the major metros, which are primary residence driven.
The Gulf Estate used to be quite a popular development, particularly in coastal regions. What's the appetite for the consumer to want to be based in a Gulf Estate outside a major metro area?
I think there still is an appeal, and especially from the retired community, people who have the luxury of being able to work from home, people who have the luxury of being able to commute to work. But as with most other leisure buying, those markets have come under pressure, and so we're seeing less demand. Unfortunately, in a lot of those leisure estates, there is still a strong overhang of land that people bought during the boom, hoping to flip it at some time. And unfortunately, in some of those estates, the ability to sell that land is almost at, and I use that word carefully, giveaway value.
We're going to take a short break. Please don't go anywhere. We'll see you on the other side of this. Welcome back to Ask the Property Experts. I'm still Kurachota, and you're still with us with John Loos from FNB and Herschel Jawitz from Jawitz Properties. Now, the leisure space is often a return on ego investment. The kind of trophy assets that are being sought. Herschel's talked earlier about the Atlantic seaboard. Where else do people with the big bucks buy to show that they got big bucks, John? You're a banker, without disclosing names, of course.
Well, yeah, the Atlantic seaboard, I guess, is the big one. Don't know if it's always to show they've got bucks or just because they have bucks, but I guess up in Gauteng it would be the likes of Sandhurst and so on, and then some of the more affluent property markets on the coast would be places like Plettenberg Bay. Not quite in the league of the Western Seaboard, but certainly where some of the rich and famous locals play. Yes.
There's noise around foreign buyers, particularly in the leisure space. They want that gorgeous Cape Town summer. They want to be overlooking the Atlantic. How are you seeing the interaction of locals versus foreigners with a weakening rand in the leisure space, Herschel?
I'm not sure we're specifically seeing an uptick in the number of foreign buyers, and don't forget that globally things aren't so good, and especially in Europe where a large percentage of those foreign buyers come from Italy, Germany, the UK. So those economies aren't doing so well, and I think they're having similar challenges in their leisure markets. But there is obviously an appetite. Clearly, it's a political/social hot potato. But I think even at the boom, Kira, I think more has been made of it than it actually is, and that percentage of buyers in that leisure market makes up a minuscule amount of people, and in any event it's not like there's a surplus of that stock. Most of that stock is really unattainable by even the wealthiest of South Africans, so it's not like South African buyers are being crowded out of that super expensive luxury market at the expense of because of the foreign buyers.
You do a great perception index, John. You talk to people, what they're thinking, what they're feeling. The biggest contributors of people buying or selling a home is upscaling or downscaling. Do you see the lifestyle, and it's not lifestyle that are married or divorced or what have you, but do you see lifestyle as wanting a green home or a leisurely place or big open spaces to walk out on the weekend? Do you see that coming through in your surveys?
I must say we haven't surveyed that specifically, because it's probably something to think of in future. But certainly my perception is that there is quite a great future for around the big cities. Where we are. A place like Joburg, which is getting more crowded and is short. A lot of areas in this town are now short of open leisure space, public open leisure space. I think there's a great future for these estates that provide that open leisure space. There's more, over time there's more popping out. I'm not convinced, though, that it's necessarily golf. I'm not convinced that golf is the fastest growing sport at the moment. A lot of people now have the mountain bike on the back of their car, and they're busy with trail running and the likes, and I think it's time for a lot more of these estates where people, not necessarily buying for holiday purposes, but as I say, near to the cities for primary residential lifestyle, to start thinking of alternatives to golf, and putting in facilities for the other sporting activities, which my perception is are growing a lot faster.
I like where John is going with that. I've enjoyed seeing a development like Jackal Creek, which is a golf estate, but it has a lot of that leisure. It has a sports club, and it's access point. So you've got the gated community aspect, but a sectional title. What other innovations do you think can take that space of people wanting not to live in boxes in the sky in concrete jungles?
So I think, as Johnson, as you said, golf courses were almost the epicenter of most of the bigger states, over the last couple of years. But I think that shift away from golf, and not only from just other interests, but, golf courses are very expensive to run, and a lot of estates have got themselves into a lot of trouble because of the crossover from the living and the golf option. So I think that, these almost self-contained, if you look in that sort of Centurion mode area, that there are one or two estates in midstream where it's almost self-contained living, from hospitals to community venues, to pharmacists, to doctors, to creches, to shopping centres. It's almost self-contained living, and when you drive there in the evening, there are kids riding their bikes, there are people running, pushing their prams, and so within that secure environment, it almost offers you a whole self-contained lifestyle living opportunity.
I think we're working towards it here. Are we not now looking towards more integrated development and the open space? Are we not now talking to developments that incorporate that very human aspect, that you want to wake up, open the window, smell the grass, hear the birds buzzing, the birds chirping, the bees buzzing? Are we not getting a more human element to combine this work and live and enjoy life space?
I think there's a strengthening desire for that. Not that everyone's going to be able to afford it always, but one thing, if you work cleverly with these integrated developments, as you put it, you can utilize space better. In other words, maybe the living part of it is going to be quite high density, as opposed to everybody having their tiny little patch behind their cluster house, and then you free up more communal area and you use that better for the good of the whole community within that development. So yeah, I think there's a future there.
That's where we're going to have to leave it. I thank John and Herschel, but I thank you in particular. You're the viewers, you drive the show, you pop in the questions. You've sent a couple of through. I want a lot more. I want loads more. Please send it through to Ask Property Experts at bdtv.co.za. Remember, in property, there is no, and I mean no, such thing as a stupid question. Thanks for watching. We'll see you again next time. Bye-bye.